An infertile mafia boss lived alone for 20 years, until 10 orphans came asking for shelter during the worst blizzard Chicago had ever seen. Behind his fortress walls, this feared crime lord had everything money could buy except what he wanted most: a family. His wife's betrayal had left him unable to have children, a secret he buried as deep as his enemies. But when he lets these desperate children into his home, he discovers their arrival wasn't random. The oldest boy has been tracking his enemy, the same man who destroyed the boss's chance at fatherhood 20 years ago. The same man who's now trafficking kids throughout the city. As the mafia boss teaches a 4-year-old girl to play chess with the set he bought for the child he never had, something frozen begins to thaw. But when evidence suggests their guardian has been working with federal agents to bring him down, his newfound family is ripped away. Now his enemies have breached his walls and taken the youngest children. Will the man who spent 2 decades alone risk everything for a family that isn't his blood? Or will the children become pawns in a revenge 20 years in the making? Through the monitors, Dominic watched the scene unfold with cold precision. His security team moved like shadows through the swirling snow, weapons drawn as they approached the huddled figures. The wind howled against the study's windows, but inside, everything was silent except for the gentle clink of ice against crystal as he set down his whiskey. "Sir," Marco's voice crackled through the intercom. "It's not what we expected." Dominic's fingers traced the grip of his Beretta as he studied the feeds. The security lights cast harsh shadows across his gates, illuminating what appeared to be a woman cradling someone in her arms. Several smaller forms huddled against her, their shapes blurred by the driving snow. "Talk to me, Marco." His voice was quiet, controlled, betraying none of the tension coiling through his body. A woman, early 30s, 4 children with her. They're nearly frozen. The youngest can't be more than 4. Children. Dominic's jaw tightened. In 20 years, no one had breached his perimeter. Now, on tonight of all nights, when memories of what he'd lost already haunted him. Search them, thoroughly. He kept his eyes on the monitors, watching his men pat down the shivering group. The woman's coat was thin, completely inadequate for the storm. One of the children wore only a sweater. "They're clean," Marco reported. "No weapons, no phones, no ID. The woman's barely conscious, sir. If we leave them out there much longer." Dominic stood, moving closer to the monitors. The smallest child had collapsed in the snow while his men searched them. Something twisted in his chest, an unfamiliar sensation he immediately suppressed. "Your orders, sir?" Marco's question hung in the air. 20 years of iron control had taught Dominic to trust his instincts. Right now, those instincts were screaming that this was wrong. No one simply stumbled upon his property. His location wasn't on any maps. The roads leading here were private, monitored. This had to be a play by his enemies, perhaps the Kharkovs finally making their move. And yet, he watched one of his men lift the unconscious child. Another child, a girl, perhaps 10 years old, tried to fight them off despite her obvious exhaustion, protecting her siblings with fierce desperation. It was the protectiveness that made him pause. That wasn't something you could fake. "Bring them in," he ordered finally. "Full security protocols, separate rooms. I want medical checks and background searches running within the hour. And Marco?" "Sir?" "Stay with them personally. I don't want any of them alone with the regular guards." "Understood." Dominic moved to his desk, pressing a button that activated additional security measures throughout the mansion. Steel shutters slid silently into place over windows. Hidden cameras activated in guest rooms. If this was a trap, they'd find nothing vulnerable here. He poured another finger of whiskey, watching as his men carried the woman and children through the snow. The woman's head lolled lifelessly against one guard's shoulder. Her face, briefly illuminated by security lights, showed signs of recent bruising. 20 years ago, he'd learned the hard way that vulnerability could be weaponized. Sophia had played her part perfectly, the loving wife, carrying his child, making him believe in family and future. Then she'd destroyed everything, leaving him with nothing but scars and a black king chess piece as a mocking reminder. Now, on his birthday of all nights, more vulnerability arrived at his gates. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. He took a slow sip of whiskey, letting the familiar burn ground him. Through the monitors, he watched his men carry their unexpected guests into the mansion's medical wing. The fierce little girl still struggled weakly, even as hypothermia clearly took its toll. The smallest child hadn't moved since being picked up. "Marco," he called through the intercom. "Initial report. Woman suffering severe hypothermia, possible concussion. Children are cold but responding better to warming measures. Dr. Chen is examining them now. the little ones starting to come around. Dominic nodded, though Marco couldn't see him. Post additional guards. I want eyes on them at all times. Already done, sir. Of course it was. Marco had been with him through everything. The betrayal, the recovery, the rebuilding. He understood the cost of trust. Dominic turned to the chess piece in its glass case. The Black King stood alone, a symbol of everything he'd built since Sophia's betrayal. Power, control, isolation, a frozen kingdom where nothing could touch him. Now that kingdom had been breached by the last thing he'd ever expected. Children seeking shelter from the storm, through stinging snow and howling wind. Emma pressed the intercom button again, her fingers numb despite her gloves. Please, she called out, her voice breaking. We have nowhere else to go. The children are freezing. Behind her, huddled against the ornate iron gates, 9 children formed a protective circle around little Mia. The 4-year-old's lips were turning blue, her small body trembling violently despite being wrapped in both Liam's coat and Emma's scarf. State your business, came the cold response through the speaker. We need help, Emma pleaded. Our van's stuck in the snow. The shelters are full. Please, there are children here. Liam pressed closer, his 17-year-old frame trying to block more wind from the younger ones. They're not answering, he muttered, eyes scanning the security cameras mounted on stone pillars. We should try somewhere else. There is nowhere else, Emma whispered, pulling Mia closer as the child's shivering intensified. The nearest town was miles back, and the borrowed van was hopelessly stuck in a snowbank, its wheels spinning uselessly when they'd tried to reverse. Behind them, Ben clutched his battered sketchbook to his chest, the pages already damp from snow. 6 years old and silent as always, he pressed against Lily's side. The 8-year-old girl hadn't spoken a word since witnessing her parents' murder, but her hand gripped Ben's tightly. The twins, Sarah and Samuel, stood back to back, their matching dark curls dusted with snow. At 15, they'd developed an uncanny ability to communicate without words, moving in sync as they helped shield the younger children from the wind. Zach paced anxiously, his brilliant mind no doubt calculating their dwindling odds of survival in these temperatures. His thin frame shook, but Emma knew his agitation wasn't just from cold change, and uncertainty always triggered his anxiety. 11-year-old Olivia had gathered Diego and Noah close, humming softly to keep the younger boys calm. Diego's quick. Temper hadn't flared once during their ordeal, his usual anger replaced by determination to help. 5-year-old Noah clutched his teddy bear, the stuffed animal's fur wet with snow but still his only comfort from his former life. This morning we had a home, Emma murmured, remembering the court order that had finally caught up with their unofficial orphanage. No license, no permits, just love and desperate need. But that hadn't been enough for the system. The intercom crackled again. Stand back from the gates. Emma's heart leaped as floodlights suddenly illuminated the driveway, nearly blinding them. The gates began to open with a mechanical whir, but her relief was short-lived as armed men emerged from the swirling snow, weapons raised. Hands where we can see them, one guard barked. Emma immediately raised her arms. Please don't frighten the children, she said firmly, despite her own terror. They've been through enough today. The guards approached cautiously, professional and efficient as they patted them down. Emma stood perfectly still, meeting their suspicious gazes with steady determination. When one guard reached for Mia, the child whimpered weakly. I've got her, Emma said quickly. She needs medical attention, she's hypothermic. After what felt like hours but was probably minutes, they were escorted through the snow toward a massive mansion. Emma had glimpsed its silhouette through the storm but now saw its true scale. A fortress of stone and steel rising against the night sky. Inside, warmth hit them like a physical force. Emma's frozen fingers burned as feeling returned. But she focused on Mia, whose shivering had almost stopped a dangerous sign. Mr. Salvatore will see you now, announced a man who introduced himself as Marco, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. Emma found herself facing a striking man in his mid-40s, impeccably dressed despite the late hour. His dark eyes assessed them with cold calculation, lingering on, each child before settling on her with penetrating intensity. Explain yourself, he commanded quietly. Before Emma could respond, Mia went limp in her arms. She needs a doctor, Emma gasped, her calm facade cracking as the little girl's head lolled against her shoulder. Something flickered in Salvatore's expression, too brief to name. He pressed a button on his desk. Get Dr. Chen here. Now. Dawn painted the Chicago skyline in shades of steel gray, the blizzard having settled into steady snowfall that blanketed the grounds in pristine white. In his office, Dominic scrolled through the background check on Emma Winters, his jaw tightening as Viktor Kharkov's name appeared repeatedly in connection with her orphanage's funding. The security feeds showed his unexpected guests still asleep in his living room, Emma curled protectively on the floor beside the children's makeshift beds. The scene stirred something he refused to examine too closely. "Marco," he spoke into his phone, voice low. "Cross. Reference every interaction between Emma Winters and Kharkov. I want dates, locations, witnesses." His eyes narrowed at the documents detailing Kharkov's urban development initiative. The same man who'd helped Sofia steal millions from him 20 years ago had systematically stripped funding from Emma's orphanage before condemning their building. A coincidence that didn't feel coincidental at all. Movement on the security feed caught his attention. Emma was awake, moving with quiet efficiency as she gently roused each child. He watched, grudgingly impressed, as she immediately established order in the chaos. "Liam, please check everyone's backpacks for homework," she whispered, smoothing Mia's tangled hair with gentle fingers. "Sarah, Samuel, can you help the younger ones get cleaned up? There's a bathroom down that hall." The twins nodded in silent synchronization, gathering toiletries from their salvaged bags. Diego grumbled sleepily but obeyed when Emma reminded him about Crotid, his math assignment. She praised Ben's newest drawing while simultaneously checking Noah's fever with the back of her hand. Dominic observed as Emma discovered his kitchen, her eyes widening at the professional-grade equipment. Without hesitation, she began opening cabinets and pulling out supplies, creating more activity in that space than it had seen in years. Flour dusted the immaculate counters as she mixed pancake batter, teaching Olivia the recipe while Zach calculated how to double the ingredients. The domestic scene felt alien in his fortress of solitude. Yet he couldn't deny the competence with which she managed her makeshift family, creating stability where there should have been only fear and uncertainty. When Emma served breakfast, the children gathered around his formal dining table, their chatter echoing through usually silent halls. Dominic chose that moment to enter, his presence causing immediate silence. 10 small faces turned toward him, expressions ranging from terror to defiance. "Miss Winters," he said softly, his quiet tone carrying more weight than a shout. "A word." Emma squeezed Mia's shoulder reassuringly before following him to the kitchen. Her chin lifted, showing the same steel he'd glimpsed last night. "Tell me about Viktor Kharkov," he commanded, watching her reaction carefully. Surprise flickered across her face. "The councilman?" "He supported our orphanage for years through his children's foundation. Monthly visits, photo ops, funding for programs." She frowned. "Until 3 months ago, when everything changed. The funding stopped. Our building was suddenly unsafe and sold to developers with ties to his office. His visits," Dominic pressed. "Who came with him? What did they discuss?" Emma's expression shifted from confusion to suspicion. "Why do you care about a city councilman's charity work? Let's call it competing business interests." He leaned against the counter, deceptively casual. "I'm offering you shelter until this. Storm passes and you find suitable arrangements. In exchange, I want details about Kharkov's operation, his associates, his schedule, his interests in your neighborhood. You're not just a businessman," Emma said quietly, pieces clicking into place. "No," he admitted. "I'm not. But right now, I'm your only option." Emma glanced at the dining room where her children huddled, then at the windows still obscured by swirling snow. Her shoulders squared. "I'll tell you what I know about Kharkov, but I need your word the children will be safe here." "You have it." Dominic's word was his bond, even if she didn't understand its weight in his world. As Emma returned to breakfast, Dominic stepped into the hallway, dialing Marco. "Put surveillance on Kharkov. I want to know everyone he meets, everywhere he goes." A cold smile curved his lips as he watched Emma soothing the children's fears, each small gesture of comfort revealing more about Kharkov's sudden interest in a neighborhood orphanage. Through the window, snow continued falling, trapping them all together in his private kingdom of marble and steel. In the dining room, Mia's laughter rang out, the sound foreign yet somehow right in these halls that had known only silence for so long. Dominic recalled another detail from Emma's background check, the cancer that had left her unable to bear children. Yet here she was, mothering 10 lost souls with fierce dedication. Perhaps they weren't so different, both building families from the ashes of what biology had denied them. He pushed that thought aside, focusing on the strategic advantage this situation offered. Kharkov had finally made a mistake, showing his hand through this development scheme. Whatever game the councilman was playing, he'd chosen the wrong pieces to sacrifice. The security feed still displayed his unexpected guests, the scene so at odds with his carefully ordered world. Emma moved between the children with natural grace, maintaining their routine despite their displacement. Even his armed guards seemed affected, their usual stoic expressions softening when Mia waved at them through the dining room doorway. The morning sun filtered through massive windows, casting long shadows across Dominic's living room where Emma had transformed the formal space into an impromptu classroom. She'd pushed the expensive leather sofas against the walls, creating an open area on the plush carpet where the younger children now sat cross-legged with paper and crayons. "Liam, could you help Sarah and Samuel organize our supplies?" Emma asked, maintaining the routines that had kept them stable through countless challenges. "Zach, please check everyone's homework from yesterday. We're not falling behind just because we're..." She paused, glancing at the armed guard positioned by the door, temporarily relocated. Dominic watched from the doorway, unnoticed. The woman had turned his sterile fortress into something alive within hours. Diego and Ben were carefully folding their borrowed blankets, while Olivia helped Mia and Noah wash up in one of the guest bathrooms. Their movements were practiced, each child knowing their role in their makeshift family's morning routine. The mansion's intercom crackled. "Sir, the supplies have arrived." Dominic's men carried in boxes of children's clothing, toiletries, and basic school supplies. Emma's eyes widened at the quantity, but she quickly recovered, directing the older children to help sort and distribute items. She pulled out a small notebook, methodically inventorying their resources, while simultaneously helping Lily pick out a clean outfit. "Miss Emma," Mia tugged at her sleeve, "I need the bathroom." "Down the hall to the right, sweetie." "Olivia, could you..." "I'll show her," Emma said, not wanting the older girl to wander alone. The mansion's layout was confusing, halls branching in multiple directions like a marble maze. After helping Mia, Emma took a wrong turn. Each corridor looked identical with their pristine walls and expensive artwork. She opened a door, expecting another bathroom, but found herself in a large office instead. Dark wood paneling and leather-bound books lined the walls. But it was the newspaper clippings that caught her attention, yellowed with age, carefully preserved behind glass. Salvatore family head assassinated. Crime boss's son takes control. Suspected mob hit leaves 5 dead. Emma's hand trembled as she touched the glass. The young man in the photos was undeniably Dominic, 20 years younger but with the same cold eyes. "Lost?" His voice behind her made her jump. Emma turned slowly. Dominic filled the doorway, his expression unreadable. "You're not just a businessman with political interests. Certain areas of my home are off limits," he said softly, dangerously. "This is one of them." "Who are you really?" Emma asked, though she already knew the answer. The headline spelled it out clearly enough. "Someone offering shelter when you have nowhere else to go." His tone left no room for discussion. "I suggest you return to the children." Back in the living room, Liam was waiting, his posture tense. "I saw you talking to him. We can't trust him, Emma. I've been asking around, the guards whisper about him. He's dangerous. We don't have a choice right now," Emma whispered, but Liam wasn't listening. When Dominic entered later to check on their arrangements, Liam stepped forward. "What do you really want from us?" The room went silent. Even the guards seemed to hold their breath. "Careful, boy." Dominic's voice was silk over steel. "You're a guest in my home." "We're hostages, you mean?" Liam shot back. "Using children to get whatever information you want about Kharkov." Dominic moved with frightening speed, but Emma was faster, placing herself between them. "Don't," she said firmly, meeting Dominic's cold stare. "He's 17 and scared. We all are." Something flickered in Dominic's eyes, surprise. Perhaps at her intervention. No one in his world dared stand against him, yet this woman faced him without flinching, protecting her charges like a lioness. The day passed in tense awareness. Emma kept the children busy with lessons, but everyone noticed how the guards' hands never strayed far from their weapons. During dinner, served in the formal dining room, the children ate quietly, shooting nervous glances at Dominic's empty chair. Later, Emma tucked them into their makeshift beds, arranged in the living room where she could watch over them all. "The roads will clear soon," she promised, smoothing Mia's hair. "We'll figure something out." "But where will we go?" Lily whispered the first words she'd spoken in months. Emma's heart clenched. "Together," she said firmly. "Wherever we go, we'll go together." Stepping into the hall to check with the guards about weather reports, Emma froze at the conversation drifting from around the corner. "Boss wants it handled quietly," a man was saying. "Like that traitor last month, the one who thought he could skim from the weapons shipment." "Poor bastard," another voice replied. "Nobody betrays Salvatore twice." Emma pressed against the wall, her heart pounding. The headlines flashed through her mind. Assassinations, mob hits, bodies found in the lake. She'd brought her children right into a killer's den. But where else could they go? The storm still raged outside. The roads remained impassable, and Kharkov's men were surely watching their usual safe houses. They were trapped here, dependent on a man who eliminated threats as easily as others swatted flies. Through the living room doorway, Emma watched her sleeping children. Mia clutched her new teddy bear, a gift from the supplies Dominic had provided. Liam sat awake in the corner, his protective gaze never leaving the door. The others huddled close together, finding comfort in their proximity. Emma felt the weight of every decision that had led them here, every choice that had seemed right at the time, but now felt like steps into quicksand. Dominic Salvatore might be their only option for survival, but at what cost? And what would happen when he no longer needed their information about Kharkov? The pale winter sun had barely crept over the horizon when Emma's eyes snapped open. She'd slept fitfully, every creak of the mansion setting her nerves on edge. Around her, the children were still sleeping soundly on their makeshift beds, looking peaceful despite their surroundings. Emma moved silently, gathering their meager belongings into the few bags they'd brought. Her movements were quick, but careful years of emergency relocations had taught her efficiency. She touched Liam's shoulder gently, and he woke instantly, alert as always. "We're leaving," she whispered. "Help me wake the others quietly." Within minutes, the children were dressed and ready, their faces showing a familiar mix of resignation and determination. They'd done this before running when staying became too dangerous, but something felt different this time. Emma led them through the quiet house toward the front door, their footsteps muffled by thick carpets. The van sat where they'd left it, now cleared of snow, but when Emma turned the key, the engine remained silent. She tried again and again, her hands shaking. "It's been disabled," Liam said, looking under the hood. Someone removed parts of the engine. Heart pounding, Emma marched back into the mansion, following the sound of voices to Dominic's study. The door was open, and he sat behind his massive desk, speaking into a phone in rapid Italian. When she entered, his eyes flicked to her briefly, before dismissing her with a wave of his hand. "The van needs to be fixed," Emma said firmly, refusing to be dismissed. "We're leaving." Dominic continued his conversation as if she hadn't spoken, turning his chair slightly away from her. His casual dismissal sent anger coursing through her veins. "Fine," she spat. "We'll walk." She gathered the children again, leading them down the long curved driveway. The morning air bit at their faces, but Emma pressed forward until armed men stepped out from behind the trees, blocking their path. "Mr. Salvatore insists you return to the house," one guard said, his hand resting on his holstered weapon. Before Emma could argue, screams erupted from the courtyard. She turned to see Dominic, his suit jacket discarded, methodically beating a guard who knelt in the blood-spattered snow. His movements were controlled, precise, each blow calculated for maximum impact. "You let someone pass the perimeter," Dominic's voice carried clearly in the cold air. "Explain why I shouldn't kill you for such incompetence." The guard's stammered pleas were cut short by another blow. Emma pushed the children back toward the house, but not before they'd witnessed the violence. Mia began crying hysterically, her small body shaking with sobs. Inside, chaos erupted. The twins huddled together in a corner, while Diego paced angrily. Zach started having a panic attack, and Olivia tried calming him while fighting her own tears. Ben clutched his sketchbook like a shield, and Noah wouldn't let go of Emma's leg. "We can't stay here," Sarah whispered, her face pale. "He's going to kill us." "He's a monster," Samuel agreed, holding his sister tighter. Liam's face had hardened into a mask of determination. "I can create a distraction." The younger ones could slip out through. The study door opened, and Dominic entered, his knuckles raw and spotted with blood. The children fell silent immediately, pressing closer to Emma. She stepped forward, forcing her voice steady despite her racing heart. "We're leaving. Now." "No," Dominic said simply, wiping his hands with a pristine handkerchief. "You're not. You can't keep us prisoner." "I can do whatever I want," he replied coldly. "This is for your protection. Kharkov's men are already watching my property. The moment they connect you to me, you become targets." He moved through the room, collecting their phones with methodical efficiency. "These are now confiscated, for your safety, of course. Marco will show you to your designated wing of the house. Guards will be posted for your protection." The way he said protection made it clear they were as much to keep them in as others out. Emma watched helplessly as Marco led them upstairs to a series of connected rooms. Despite the luxury plush carpets, elegant furniture, private bathrooms, the windows were reinforced, and guards stood at every exit. As evening approached, Emma stood at the window, watching armed men patrol the grounds with military precision. The reality of their situation pressed down on her like a physical weight. They weren't guests, they were captives, caught in some dangerous game between Dominic and Kharkov. Liam appeared beside her, his jaw set in that way that meant he was planning something. "The ventilation system," he whispered. "I've been studying the layout. If we can get to the basement, we need to find another way out." Emma murmured back, keeping her voice low. She didn't trust the walls in this place. Didn't trust anything except the children who depended on her. In his security room, Dominic watched their whispered conversation on multiple screens, their desperate plotting captured perfectly by hidden cameras and microphones. His fingers traced the edge of a chess piece, the Black King, as he considered his next move in this dangerous game. The children had spent the day exploring their gilded cage, testing boundaries, looking for weaknesses. They were survivors, he'd give them that. But so was he. And he'd survived by never leaving anything to chance. Emma jolted awake at dawn, her internal clock still set to their orphanage schedule. As she did her usual head count, her heart stopped. Liam's bed was empty, the covers thrown back. She checked the bathroom, the sitting area, even under the beds where the younger ones sometimes hid. "No, Liam." Her hands trembled as she shook Sarah awake. "Have you seen Liam?" The teen shook her head, fear creeping into her eyes. "Not since last night." Emma's mind raced with horrible possibilities. Had Dominic's men caught him trying to escape? Was he hurt? Or worse? She stormed through the halls, ignoring the guards who tried to stop her. When she reached Dominic's study, she threw open the heavy doors without knocking. Dominic sat at his desk, apparently unsurprised by her dramatic entrance. "Miss Winters, it's rather early for—" "Where is he?" Emma demanded, her voice shaking. "If you've heard him—" "Boss." Marco's voice crackled through the intercom. "We found the kid. South wing, near your private quarters." 2 guards dragged Liam in moments later. Emma rushed to check him for injuries, but he shrugged her off. "I'm fine," he muttered, meeting Dominic's cold stare with defiance. "Explain yourself," Dominic ordered quietly. The softness of his voice somehow made it more threatening. Emma stepped between them. "He's just a boy. Whatever he did. Let him speak." Dominic cut her off, his eyes never leaving Liam. To Emma's shock, Liam straightened his shoulders and pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "I have something you want to see." He laid out a detailed map of Kharkov's properties, complete with dates, times, and surveillance photos. Emma's blood ran cold as she recognized what she was seeing. "You've been tracking him," she whispered. "All those times you said you were at the library." "Someone had to do something," Liam said firmly. "The police wouldn't listen. Social services ignored it. But I knew you would care, Mr. Salvatore, because Kharkov stole from you too." Emma sank into a chair as the truth hit her. The storm, the van breaking down. None of it was an accident, was it? "I disabled the van myself," Liam admitted. "I knew we needed someone powerful enough to take Kharkov down. Someone with resources. Someone with a reason to hate him." "You put everyone in danger," Emma said, her voice breaking. "The little ones are safer here than in some state facility where Kharkov's people could grab them." Liam pulled out more photos. "Look at these. Known traffickers meeting with Kharkov's men. Children going into buildings and never coming out. All from the foster system. All forgotten." Dominic studied the evidence with clinical detachment. "How long have you been gathering this?" 8 months. Ever since I saw them take Jenny." Liam's voice cracked slightly. "She was in my last foster home, 13 years old. One day, men came to interview her for a special program. She never came back." Emma felt sick. She'd thought she was protecting these children, but Liam had been fighting a war she hadn't even known about. "Your investigation is impressive," Dominic said finally. "But amateur. You could have gotten yourself killed." "Better than doing nothing," Liam shot back. "You want Kharkov? I'm giving you a way to destroy him completely. Child trafficking? Even his political connections can't save him from that." Emma watched Dominic's expression shift microscopically. She'd seen that look before when he was calculating odds, weighing risks against rewards. "You manipulated your way into my home," Dominic said softly. "Used children as pawns in your game. Put Miss Winters at risk without her knowledge." Liam didn't flinch. "Yes, because it was necessary." A heavy silence filled the room. Emma held her breath, remembering the guard in the snow, Dominic's capacity for violence. But Dominic merely nodded. Marco, get our intelligence team on this. I want every piece of evidence verified, every connection tracked. After Marco led Liam out, Emma remained, trying to process everything. Did you know? She asked Dominic. About the trafficking? I suspected Kharkov had expanded into human trafficking. I didn't know he targeted children specifically. His voice held a note of disgust she hadn't heard before. That night, after ensuring the younger children were asleep, Emma found Liam in the window seat of their shared living area. He pulled out a phone she hadn't known he had, showing her more evidence. I had to do something, he said quietly. Nobody else was going to save those other kids. Emma saw the weight he'd been carrying, the responsibility he'd shouldered alone. Before she could respond, movement caught her eye. Dominic stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable as he observed them. In that moment, Emma realized they'd become entangled in something far bigger than seeking shelter. They were now part of Dominic's vendetta against Kharkov, and there would be no easy escape from the web of violence and vengeance they'd entered. But looking at Liam's evidence, the faces of missing children staring back at her, she wondered if escape was what they should be seeking at all. Dawn broke over Lake Michigan, the sound of hammering and power tools shattering the mansion's usual silence. Emma stirred, momentarily disoriented by the noise before remembering where she was a week into their unexpected stay at Dominic Salvatore's estate. She padded to the window, watching construction crews swarm the east wing. Trucks lined the circular driveway, workers carrying lumber and drywall through the service entrance. What's happening? Liam appeared beside her, tension visible in his shoulders. Looks like renovations. Emma wrapped her cardigan tighter, still adjusting to the mansion's perpetual chill. Throughout the morning, their curiosity grew as they watched rooms transform. What had been empty, dusty spaces became proper bedrooms with fresh paint and new furniture. A large room overlooking the garden was outfitted with desks and whiteboards clearly meant to be a classroom. The playroom is huge, Mia exclaimed, bouncing on her toes as she peeked into another freshly renovated space. Storage boxes arrived filled with toys, books, and art supplies. Emma found Dominic in his study, surrounded by contractors' paperwork. You didn't have to do all this. The children need proper accommodations, he replied without looking up. I won't have chaos in my home. Is that what we are? Chaos? His pen paused. You're here indefinitely. Better to establish order quickly. Throughout the day, Emma worked to maintain their routine despite the construction noise. The older children helped with breakfast cleanup while she supervised the younger ones' reading lessons. When tutors arrived, apparently hired by Dominic, she insisted on reviewing their credentials herself. They're thoroughly vetted, Dominic said, appearing in the doorway during math lessons. Like your other employees? Emma challenged, thinking of the guard she'd seen him beat. His expression hardened. More so. I don't allow threats near children. Later that afternoon, Marco escorted Emma to Dominic's study for their first strategy meeting about Kharkov. The room felt different with Liam there, spread maps and surveillance photos covering the massive desk. The trafficking operation uses these warehouses, Liam explained, marking locations. They move the kids at night, usually in groups of 3 or 4. Dominic's fingers traced routes on the map. These align with my intelligence about money movement. The timing matches significant transfers through these shell companies. Emma watched him work, impressed despite herself. His mind made connections rapidly, building a complex web of evidence, but her admiration curdled when the discussion turned darker. This dock supervisor, Dominic mused. He's a liability. He's a witness, Emma interjected. He could testify. He could disappear, Dominic countered coldly. No. Emma slammed her hand on the desk. We're not killing people. This isn't a game. Dominic's voice dropped dangerously. Kharkov's operation ends, one way or another. Through legal channels, Emma insisted. Or I take the children and leave. Do you? His smile held no warmth. How far would you get? The tension crackled between them until Liam cleared his throat. Maybe we should focus on the documentation first. Hours later, Emma cornered Dominic in the hallway. What exactly is our status here? Are we your guests, your prisoners, or your pawns? He studied her for a long moment. You're under my protection now. What happens to Kharkov happens regardless of your presence. The only choice you have is whether you help make it cleaner or messier. That evening, the children gathered in their new common room. Emma read stories to the younger ones while Sarah and Samuel taught Diego card games. The space felt almost normal, filled with warmth and laughter that echoed through the usually silent halls. Movement caught Emma's eye. Dominic stood in the doorway, watching them with an unreadable expression. "Want to play chess?" Mia asked him, holding up a piece from the new set. Something flickered across his face. Longing, perhaps, or regret. Not tonight. But he remained there, observing their easy interactions, the casual affection between the children, the way they'd carved out a pocket of normality in his austere world. Emma saw him unconsciously lean toward their warmth before catching himself, straightening his shoulders and retreating into the shadows. "He's lonely," Mia declared with a child's simple wisdom. Emma watched his departing figure. "Yes, I think he is." The renovation sounds had finally ceased, leaving behind spaces that felt intentionally crafted for them. Emma tucked the younger children into their new beds, each room personalized with care she wouldn't have expected from someone like Dominic. In the quiet aftermath of bedtime, she wandered their transformed wing. Everything was high quality but practical, built to last, designed for children while maintaining the mansion's elegant aesthetic. It spoke of permanence in a way that made her both grateful and uneasy. Through a window, she spotted Dominic in the courtyard, phone pressed to his ear as he paced. His gestures were sharp, controlled anger visible even at a distance. She wondered what kind of man could order both children's furniture and hits on witnesses in the same day. A soft tug at her sleeve startled her. Ben stood there in his pajamas, clutching his ever-present sketchbook. "Can I show you what I drew?" The page revealed a crayon drawing of their group, stick figures in front of a large house. At the edge stood a tall black figure, separate but watching. "That's Mr. Salvatore," Ben explained. "He looks scary, but he gave me new crayons." Emma studied the child's perspective of their situation, the isolation of their host, the barrier between him and the family unit they'd created, the hint of connection not yet bridged. The kitchen's marble counters gleamed in early morning light as Dominic entered, his footsteps echoing in the usual silence. He stopped abruptly at the sight of Ben perched on a stool, crayons scattered across the pristine surface, small legs swinging as he concentrated on his drawing. The boy didn't look up, seemingly unbothered by the imposing figure who normally sent adults scrambling from his path. Dominic moved to the coffee maker, hyper-aware of the child's presence in his carefully controlled space. The machine's familiar whir filled the awkward silence. Ben's crayon scratched against paper as Dominic poured his coffee. Without speaking, the boy slid a completed drawing across the counter. Dominic found himself staring at a black king chess piece, carefully rendered in crayon, surrounded by smaller figures holding hands. His coffee grew cold as he studied the image, unsettled by how the child had captured his isolation. Throughout the morning, evidence of the children's integration appeared everywhere. In the security room, his top enforcer Tony sat teaching Diego poker, patiently explaining hand rankings while other guards offered advice. The boy's face lit up as he laid down a full house, collecting chocolate chips they used for betting. "You're a natural kid," Tony said, ruffling Diego's hair with a hand that had broken bones. In the kitchen, Mrs. Chen, his housekeeper of 15 years, guided Olivia through measuring ingredients for cookies. The normally stern woman smiled as flour dusted their aprons, showing the girl how to properly cream butter and sugar. "Like this?" Olivia asked, beaming when Mrs. Chen nodded approval. Down the hall, giggles echoed as his security team engaged in an elaborate game of hide-and-seek with Mia and Noah. Marco, who'd once survived 3 assassination attempts, crawled on hands and knees checking behind curtains while the children stifled laughs from their hiding spots. Dominic retreated to his office, unsure how to process these changes in his carefully ordered household. He was reviewing reports when his Lieutenant Carlo arrived with urgent news about Kharkov's movements. "He's meeting contacts at the docks tonight," Carlo reported as Emma and Liam entered for their daily strategy session. "We have surveillance in place." Dominic made calls, issuing commands with cold precision. "Double the watch on Warehouse 3. Pay whatever necessary to get dock schedules. If anyone interferes, handle it." Rather than shrinking from his methods, Emma leaned forward. "The dock workers, are they involved or just taking bribes to look away?" "Mostly uninformed," Dominic answered, studying her analytical expression. "They're told it's contraband electronics. So they could be turned," she suggested. "If they knew the truth about trafficking, some might help us document shipments." Dominic raised an eyebrow, impressed by her grasp of leverage points. They spent an hour discussing pressure tactics and information networks, Emma quickly grasping the power dynamics at play. That afternoon, movement caught his eye as he passed his private study. Mia stood examining his chess set, small fingers hovering over the pieces. Instead of shooing her away, Dominic found himself entering the room. "Do you know how to play?" he asked quietly. She shook her head, dark eyes curious. Will you teach me? The request echoed across decades, stirring memories of his father's lessons. Dominic sat, positioning the board between them. The most important piece is the king, he explained, the words flowing from childhood memory. All other pieces exist to protect him. He guided her tiny hand to each piece, describing their movements as his father once had. The knight moves in an L shape, like this. It's the only piece that can jump others. Emma appeared in the doorway but remained silent, watching as Dominic demonstrated basic strategies. His hands, capable of such violence, moved with surprising gentleness as he helped Mia practice proper piece placement. At dinner that evening, the usual clamor of children's voices filled the formal dining room. Dominic sat at the head of the table, still adjusting to meals no longer taken alone in his study. Mr. Salvatore, Mia's clear voice cut through the chatter. How come you don't have any kids? The silence crashed down like a physical weight. Forks froze midair as the older children tensed, recognizing dangerous territory. Dominic sat motionless, throat tight as ancient pain surfaced. Some men aren't meant to be fathers, he finally managed, voice rough. He pushed back from the table, needing escape from their stares. In his study, Dominic stood before the glass case holding the single black king. Emma's soft footsteps approached behind him. He could see her reflection in the glass, concern evident in her expression. That piece, she said carefully. It seems important to you. Dominic's fingers traced the case. I bought a chess set, he said, the words dragging like broken glass. When Sophia told me she was pregnant, I planned to teach my child, as my father taught me. He swallowed hard. After everything, I kept only this piece, a reminder. Emma stepped closer, her presence somehow both intrusive and comforting in this space where he nursed old wounds. The king stood in its case, a monument to legacy denied, while children's laughter echoed distantly through his fortress of solitude. Morning sunlight streamed through tall windows as Emma gathered scattered laundry from the children's rooms. Even after weeks in the mansion, its grandeur still struck her crystal chandeliers above unmade bunk beds, priceless art watching over stuffed animals and comic books. She balanced a basket against her hip, pausing outside Dominic's study as his voice carried through the partially open door. The meeting set for noon. He spoke into his phone, his tone carrying that deadly softness she'd learned meant business. Yes, at Valentino's. Our friend from the city planning office is feeling talkative. Emma shifted, about to move past, when floorboards creaked beneath her feet. Dominic's head snapped up, eyes locking onto her. She expected anger at her eavesdropping, but instead, he studied her thoughtfully. Wait, he said into the phone. Change of plans. Make the reservation for 2. He ended the call, still watching her. How familiar are you with Kharkov's regular visitors to the orphanage? I saw most of them, Emma replied cautiously. The officials, his associates, they'd come for publicity photos whenever he made donations. Good. Dominic stood, straightening his immaculate suit. You're coming with me. Emma glanced down at her worn jeans and sweater. Like this? His lips quirked slightly. Marco arranged a suitable wardrobe weeks ago. 2nd floor, east wing closet. Be ready in 30 minutes. The closet turned out to be a boutique's worth of designer clothing, all in her size. Emma chose a navy sheath dress and heels, trying to ignore what this level of preparation implied about their planned stay. Dominic waited by a sleek black car, his usual guards positioned nearby. He opened the door for her, and Emma slid onto buttery leather seats. As they pulled away from the mansion, she realized this was her first time beyond the gates since arriving. The person we're meeting, Dominic explained as they drove, is involved in city planning. He's nervous about being seen with me, so we'll be playing a role. His eyes met hers. We're a couple discussing property investment. Follow my lead. Valentino's was the kind of restaurant Emma had only seen in movies, all crystal and white tablecloths, with a string quartet playing softly. Dominic's hand settled on her lower back as they were led to their table, the casual intimacy of the gesture making her pulse jump. A thin, nervous man already waited there, fidgeting with his water glass. Dominic pulled out Emma's chair, letting his fingers brush her shoulder as she sat her day. Emma, darling, he said, his voice warming in a way that seemed practiced but sent shivers down her spine. This is Mr. Peterson from the planning office. Throughout lunch, Dominic maintained their couple's facade with unsettling skill. His hand would cover hers while discussing development zones, his thumb stroking her knuckles. He'd lean close to murmur comments, his breath warming her ear. Emma found herself responding naturally, touching his arm while laughing at his remarks. leaning into his space. Peterson slid photos across the table between courses, hands shaking slightly. "These are the next properties marked for development," he whispered. Emma's stomach clenched as she recognized the buildings, all group homes or small charitable organizations housing children. Street Mary's Home for Girls, the Baker Street Youth Center, places she'd worked with for years. "The demolition contracts all go to shell companies," Peterson continued. "But look at the timing. Each property is cleared within days of the children being relocated." "Relocated where?" Emma demanded, forgetting their pretense. Peterson shrank from her intensity. Dominic squeezed her hand in warning, maintaining his pleasant smile. "That's what we're all wondering, aren't we, dear?" he said smoothly. "Such an efficient system they've developed." They were halfway back to the mansion when Emma noticed the black SUV that had been behind them for several turns. Before she could speak, Dominic yanked her down across the seats. Glass exploded above them as bullets tore through the car. Emma felt Dominic's body covering hers, sheltering her from the debris. His chest pressed against her back, his arm tight around her waist as the car swerved violently. "Stay down," he ordered, his lips against her ear. The calm in his voice somehow steadied her racing heart. "You're safe. I've got you." He shifted enough to draw a gun from under the seat, returning fire through the shattered window. The percussion of gunshots filled the car as their driver executed a series of sharp turns that threw them against each other. Emma clutched Dominic's arm, feeling his rapid heartbeat matching hers where they pressed together. His free hand stroked her hair, oddly gentle amid the chaos. Minutes stretched like hours before they screeched through the mansion's gates. Dominic helped her from the car, leading her straight to his study. He cupped her face, examining a cut on her cheek from the flying glass. "It's shallow," he murmured, his thumb ghosting over the small wound. Emma realized how close they stood, his touch lingering as adrenaline still coursed through her system. Marco's entrance broke the moment. "Sir, the orphanage building, it's gone. Demolished overnight. The whole block's been cleared." Dominic's hand slid to Emma's shoulder, squeezing gently as she processed this news. All evidence, all records, everything that might have documented Kharkov's activities destroyed. "Now do you understand why you can't leave?" Dominic asked softly, his voice carrying an unfamiliar note of concern beneath its usual steel. The scream shattered the mansion's midnight silence. It wasn't the typical cry of a child's nightmare. This was raw, primal terror ripping through the darkness. Guards burst through doors, weapons drawn, as the sound echoed down marble hallways. Lily thrashed in her bed, trapped in memories no 8-year-old should carry. Emma held her, murmuring reassurances that couldn't penetrate the girl's panic. The other children huddled in doorways, wide-eyed and trembling. Dominic appeared like a shadow in the doorway, bare-chested with sleep pants slung low on his hips. His hair was disheveled, but his eyes were sharp as he assessed the situation. "Move," he ordered softly, and Emma found herself shifting aside despite her protective instincts. He sat on the edge of Lily's bed, his massive frame somehow gentle in the dim light. Rather than reaching for her, he simply waited, letting her register his presence through her terror. "I have nightmares too," he said quietly when her screams subsided to hiccuping sobs. "The kind that wake you up shaking, convinced the monsters are still there." Lily's huge eyes fixed on him, tears streaming down her face. "People tell you they're not real," he continued. "That it was just a dream, but they're wrong, aren't they? The monsters are real. I've met them, fought them." His voice carried the weight of experience. "The nightmares never fully go away, but they can become bearable." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small knife in a leather sheath. "This was my first weapon, given to me when I was about your age. It helped me sleep, knowing I could protect myself." Emma watched, breath caught, as he showed Lily how to hold it properly. "The monsters are real," he repeated, "but so are the people who fight them." Lily clutched the knife to her chest, her breathing finally steadying. When she lay back down, Dominic helped her tuck the sheathed blade under her pillow. Hours later, as dawn approached, another crisis erupted. Zach collapsed during breakfast, his skin burning with fever. The local doctor Dominic summoned looked bewildered, unable to identify the cause as Zach's temperature climbed dangerously high. "Get me, Spencer," Dominic barked into his phone. "I don't care if he's in Switzerland. Get him here." He turned to Emma. "Best infectious disease specialist in the country. He'll be here in 4 hours." They maintained a vigil in Zach's room, watching his chest rise and fall with labored breaths. Emma paced until exhaustion forced her into a chair beside Dominic. Despite her determination to stay awake, her head eventually drooped against his shoulder. She woke disoriented, Dominic's expensive cologne filling her senses. Through half-closed eyes, she watched him lean forward, speaking softly to Zach. "You fight," he whispered fiercely. "In this house, we fight. Whatever this is, you're stronger." His hand rested briefly on Zach's burning forehead. "I've seen your mind, kid. Too brilliant to check out like this." "Doctor." Spencer arrived at dawn, immediately identifying a rare infection typically seen in immunocompromised patients. As treatments began and Zach's fever finally broke, Emma and Dominic stepped into the hallway, both drained from the night's vigil. "I should have asked about his medical history," Emma said, guilt weighing heavily. "His previous placements mentioned immune issues, but with everything happening." "Stop," Dominic interrupted. "You've kept 10 children alive and thriving with no resources. Now you have resources. Use them." Something in his tone made Emma look closer. In the pale morning light, his customary mask had slipped, revealing raw emotion she'd never seen. "I built all this," he gestured to their surroundings. "An empire that spans continents, but I couldn't." He stopped, jaw clenching. "Sophia's betrayal took more than money. The attack left me unable to have children. What kind of legacy can a man leave when he can't even create life?" "I can't either," Emma admitted quietly. "Aggressive cancer at 16. The treatment saved my life but took that possibility." She smiled sadly. "Maybe that's why I started taking in strays. Not the children I thought I'd have, but the ones who needed me." Dominic was silent for a long moment. "You've built something remarkable with them. A real family, not just shared blood." They moved to the window, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Dominic's hand found hers, tentatively at first, then with quiet certainty. "Thank you," Emma whispered, "for saving Zach's life." "He's one of ours now," Dominic replied without hesitation. Then his expression shifted, surprise flickering across his features as he processed his own words. Before either could address this revelation, Marco appeared, slightly breathless. "Sir, we have confirmation. Kharkov will attend the Children's Hope Foundation Gala tonight. It's our best chance to gather evidence and identify his contacts." Sunlight still streamed through the mansion's windows when Emma found herself surrounded by Dominic's personal styling team. A veritable army descended upon her with racks of designer gowns, boxes of jewels, and an array of beauty products that would rival any luxury spa. "Mr. Salvatore insists on perfection," the lead stylist explained, holding up a midnight blue gown that shimmered like starlight. Emma watched in the mirror as they transformed her. The dress hugged every curve, its deep neckline elegant rather than provocative. Her usual practical bun gave way to loose waves that tumbled past her shoulders. When the makeup artist finished, Emma hardly recognized herself. The finishing touch, a security man announced, arriving with a velvet box. Inside lay a diamond necklace that caught the light like captured fire. Emma's breath caught. "I can't." "You can and you will." Dominic's voice came from the doorway. He'd been transformed as well, his usual. Dark suits replaced by an impeccably tailored tuxedo that emphasized his powerful frame. He approached, lifting the necklace. "May I?" Emma nodded, turning to allow him access. His fingers brushed her neck as he fastened the clasp, lingering longer than necessary. Their eyes met in the mirror. "Perfect," he murmured. The ride to the gala passed in tense silence as they reviewed their roles. Emma would be Caroline Matthews, art dealer, and Dominic's latest companion. Their cover story placed their meeting at a gallery opening months ago. "Stay close to me," Dominic instructed as they approached the venue. "These people are wolves in designer clothing." The Grand Plaza Hotel's ballroom blazed with crystal chandeliers and Chicago's elite. Emma felt the shift in Dominic as they entered, his usual cold demeanor replaced by practiced charm. He guided her through the crowd with a proprietary hand at her lower back, making introductions with practiced ease. Emma watched him work the room, noting how others responded to him. Some with fear barely concealed behind polite smiles, others with obvious respect. He wielded influence like a finely honed blade, every conversation carrying subtle weight. "Salvatore," a sharp voice cut through the crowd. "I didn't expect to see you here." Viktor Kharkov approached, champagne in hand. He was younger than Emma expected, handsome in a predatory way that set her nerves on edge. "Viktor." Dominic's tone carried just enough warmth to be polite. "Allow me to introduce Caroline Matthews." Kharkov's eyes raked over Emma with unveiled interest. "Charming. You've been keeping this lovely creature all to yourself, Salvatore." "You know me," Dominic replied smoothly. "I prefer to keep my treasures close." The orchestra began a new song. and Dominic seized the excuse to escape. "If you'll excuse us. I believe I promised my date a dance." He led Emma to the dance floor, pulling her closer than strictly necessary. His hand settled possessively at her waist as they moved to the music. "You're doing well," he murmured against her ear. "Kharkov's security chief has made 3 calls since we arrived. They're nervous." Emma relaxed into their dance, using the intimacy to whisper her own observations. "The woman in red by the bar, she's been photographing everyone on her phone. One of yours? Very good," Dominic approved. "You have sharp eyes." "Everyone's watching us," Emma noted, feeling the weight of countless stares. Dominic's hand tightened on her waist. "Good. I want them to see what's mine." The possessive heat in his voice sent shivers down her spine. Their bodies moved closer, the pretense of gathering intelligence becoming secondary to the electricity building between them. The spell broke when Emma's phone buzzed. She stepped away to check the message, angling the screen to show Dominic a photo Olivia had sent of the younger children already in pajamas. A sharp intake of breath behind her made Emma turn. One of Kharkov's guards stood too close, his eyes fixed on her phone screen. Before she could hide it, he'd already seen Liam in the background. "Sir," he called to Kharkov, who approached with narrowed eyes. Recognition dawned on his face as he looked between Emma and her phone. Well, if it isn't Miss Winters herself. I must say, this is an unexpected pleasure." Dominic's hand returned to Emma's waist, but this time it was protective rather than possessive. "Is there a problem?" "Not at all," Kharkov smiled coldly. "I simply didn't expect to see the former director of St. Michael's Home for Children at such an exclusive event. Tell me, how are your charges adjusting to their displacement?" The threat in his voice was unmistakable. Emma felt Dominic go rigid beside her. "If you'll excuse us." Dominic's voice carried deadly calm. "We were just leaving." They maintained composure until reaching the car. The moment the door closed, Dominic exploded into action, barking orders into his phone. "Marco, initiate Protocol Echo. Get the children to the lake house immediately. Full security detail." His knuckles whitened around the phone. "No one sleeps until they're secure." Emma reached for his clenched fist, slowly working his fingers open to twine with hers. "We knew the risks," she said softly. Dominic looked at their joined hands, then at her face. Something broke in his expression. In one fluid motion, he pulled her across the seat and into his arms. His kiss was desperate, claiming, breaking every barrier they'd carefully maintained. Emma melted into him, her hands finding his shoulders as his tangled in her hair. The diamond necklace caught between them as he deepened the kiss, pouring weeks of tension and denial into this one moment of surrender. The gates of the mansion burst open as their car sped through, security teams already mobilized around the perimeter. Even before they stopped, Emma could hear Mia's frightened crying echoing from inside. Her heart seized. Dominic was out first, pulling her behind him as guards reported the situation. Blood stained the pristine snow near the children's play area, dark spatters stark against white. A body lay covered nearby. "Report," Dominic barked, his earlier charm replaced by lethal focus. 3 men breached the east fence, Marco explained quickly. "Tried to grab the little one, Mia." Zach intervened. "Johnson is dead. 2 hostiles eliminated. 1 escaped." Emma was already running toward the house, Dominic close behind. They found most of the children huddled in the secure room, Olivia trying to calm the younger ones. Zach lay on a couch, blood seeping through bandages on his arm, his face pale but determined. "Where's Mia?" Emma demanded. "With Liam." Olivia pointed upstairs. "She won't stop crying." They found them in Mia's room, the little girl clinging to Liam as he kept watch at the window, a gun visible in his waistband. Emma gathered Mia into her arms while Dominic spoke quietly with Liam. "Tell me. Everything," Dominic ordered. "They came over the wall during outdoor time," Liam reported. "Went straight for Mia. Zach noticed first, got between them. Took a knife meant for her. Johnson engaged, took down one before the second shot him. Our security eliminated the second attacker. 3rd one ran." Dominic's face hardened with each detail. Emma had never seen such cold fury in his eyes. "Marco," he called. "Status on tracking the survivor?" "Found him. Safe house on the south side. Prepare the car." Dominic turned to Emma. "Stay with the children." "No." Emma handed Mia to Liam. "I'm coming with you." "This won't be pleasant." "They tried to take our children." Emma's voice was steel. "I need to know why." The drive to the safe house was tense, Emma still in her evening gown, Dominic radiating controlled violence. The building was abandoned except for the basement where they found the survivor, one of Kharkov's men, already restrained. What followed showed Emma a side of Dominic she'd known existed but never witnessed. He was methodical, almost elegant in his brutality. Each broken finger, each precise cut, served a purpose. Emma stood in the corner, unflinching, understanding now that some monsters required monsters to fight them. The children. Dominic's voice never rose above a whisper. "Tell me about the operation." The man's resistance crumbled under Dominic's expertise. The truth spilled out between screams. Kharkov's network specifically targeted orphanages and foster homes, but not just for trafficking. They had a specialized market. Wealthy, desperate couples unable to have children naturally. Infertile couples? Dominic's knife stilled. "You sell children to infertile couples?" "Premium prices?" the man gasped. "They're more desperate, less likely to ask questions." Emma watched something break in Dominic's eyes. The next few minutes forced her to turn away, though she didn't leave. When silence finally fell, Dominic's hands were covered in blood. The drive home was electric, with unspoken words and suppressed emotion. They barely made it inside before Dominic pushed Emma against the wall, his mouth claiming hers with desperate intensity. She matched his urgency, hands pulling at his clothes. "Your room," she gasped between kisses. They stumbled through his private wing to a bedroom that felt unlived in, pristine and cold until they fell onto the massive bed in a tangle of evening wear and need. Emma arched beneath him as his hands and mouth explored every inch of exposed skin. His touch was possessive, yet reverent, marking her as his while worshipping her body. "Mine," he growled against her throat. "Say you're mine." "Yours," Emma gasped as he entered her. "We're all yours." Their coupling was fierce, yet tender, passionate, yet achingly intimate. Every thrust, every kiss carried months of longing and denied emotion. When they finally lay spent in each other's arms, the barriers between them had crumbled completely. "I'm failing them," Emma whispered into the darkness. "I promised to keep them safe, and now they're in more danger than ever." Dominic's arms tightened around her. "You gave them something more valuable than safety. You gave them family. Purpose." His voice roughened. "You gave that to all of us." "I was so afraid of you at first," she admitted. "Now I'm only afraid of losing this. Losing you." "Sleep," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I'll keep watch." Emma drifted off in his embrace, feeling truly safe for the first time since arriving at his gates. She didn't notice when he slipped from the bed, drawn to his laptop by an urgent message. The surveillance photos loaded slowly, each image a fresh betrayal. Emma, months ago, meeting with federal agents, accepting files, making calls from payphones. The evidence was undeniable. She had been planted to infiltrate his organization. In the bed, Emma stirred restlessly. "Dominic," she murmured, reaching for his absent warmth. He stared at the screen, then at her sleeping form, his world crumbling silently in the pre-dawn darkness. Emma woke to cold sheets where Dominic's warmth should have been. Sunlight streamed through unfamiliar windows. She'd never seen his bedroom in daylight before. Her body ached sweetly from their passionate night, but something felt wrong in the heavy silence of the mansion. She found her evening gown from the gala crumpled on the floor, hopelessly wrinkled. After searching briefly, she located a robe in Dominic's closet that smelled of his cologne. The fabric swallowed her, but it would do until she could reach her room. The hallways were eerily quiet. No children's laughter, no staff moving about their duties. Her bare feet made no sound on the thick carpets as she searched for signs of life. When she reached the main living area, her heart stopped. All 10 children stood clustered together, surrounded by packed suitcases. Dominic's men lined the walls, faces impassive, weapons visible, and Dominic, her breath caught at the sight of him. Gone was the man who had held her so tenderly hours before. This was the crime boss she'd first met, cold and unreachable. "What's happening?" Her voice quavered despite her effort to stay calm. Dominic didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked to his desk and retrieved a manila envelope. When he spoke, his voice was devoid of emotion. "Tell me about your meetings with the FBI." The blood drained from Emma's face as he spread surveillance photos across the desk. There she was, outside a federal building 3 months ago, speaking with agents at a cafe, making calls from various payphones. "It's not what you think," she started, but he cut her off. "Kharkov sent these an hour ago. Quite comprehensive documentation of your role as a federal informant." His laugh was bitter. "The orphanage closure. Your arrival here all orchestrated to place you in my path, using children as cover. I must admit, it was brilliantly planned." "No!" Emma stepped forward, desperate to make him understand. "Yes, they approached me, but I refused. Save your lies." Dominic's voice could have frozen flame. "You've compromised everyone's safety. Marco, escort Miss Winters from the property." "Don't touch her!" Liam surged forward, shrugging off the guard who tried to stop him. "Boss, listen to me. I knew about the feds. They threatened Emma. Said they'd shut us down if she didn't help them get to you. She told them to go to hell. That's why they closed the orphanage." For a fraction of a second, uncertainty flickered in Dominic's eyes. But Emma watched his walls slam back into place, betrayal hardening his features into an impenetrable mask. "Take her out," he ordered. Marco gripped her arm. Emma fought, twisting toward the children. "I'll come back for you, I promise. Don't be afraid." "Emma!" Mia's scream tore at her heart. The little girl tried to run to her, but Dominic caught her, holding her back as she thrashed and cried. "She betrayed us all," Dominic told the sobbing child, his voice harsh. "She used you to get close to me." "That's not true," Emma's voice broke. "Dominic, please look at me. What we shared last night. Get her out of my sight." His words cut like ice as he turned away, shields fully restored. The guards dragged her through the mansion's winding halls. She caught glimpses of the life they'd built, Mia's chess pieces scattered on a side table, Ben's drawings taped to walls, the kitchen where they'd shared meals, all of it crumbling like a dream. They pushed her out into the morning rain without even letting her change. The gates clanged shut with terrible finality. Through the bars, she saw Mia's tear-stained face pressed against a window, tiny hands reaching for her. Dominic stood behind the child, his expression as remote as when they'd first arrived. Emma wandered the city in Dominic's robe, rain soaking through to her skin. She couldn't go to the police any. Official involvement would put the children at risk. Kharkov would be watching for exactly that move. Her mind raced through options. The children were safer with Dominic than anywhere else, despite his anger. He would protect them, even if he believed the worst of her. But she had to find a way back to them before Kharkov made his next move. As darkness fell, she found herself outside the private practice of Dr. Chen, the specialist Dominic had called for Zach. She'd kept his card, touched by his kindness during that frightening night. Now he represented her only hope. Her finger trembled as she pressed the after-hours buzzer. Rain dripped from her hair, the borrowed robe now a sodden weight. She probably looked deranged, but she had nowhere else to turn. "Please," she whispered to the intercom. "I need help. It's about the boy with the infection, Zach. The children are in danger." The silence stretched until she thought he wouldn't answer. Then the lock clicked, and warm light spilled onto the wet sidewalk as the door opened. The study's silence echoed with accusation as Dominic poured another glass of whiskey, his third or maybe fourth of the evening. On his laptop screen, security footage played in an endless loop. Emma reading to the children, Emma preparing meals, Emma laughing at something Mia said. He searched each frame for deception, for any sign that would validate his decision to cast her out. The chess set gathered dust on the side table, Mia's white queen still lying where she'd dropped it 3 days ago. "I don't want to play anymore," she'd said, her small voice heavy with hurt. "You made Emma go away." Down the hall, the children's wing sat empty, its warmth replaced by the sterile quiet of the mansion's east wing where he'd relocated them. The move was strategic. He told himself better security, more distance from potential threats. But the truth haunted him. He couldn't bear walking past their old rooms, seeing the life they'd built there. He rewound the footage again, focusing on Emma's face as she spoke with his men, helped with surveillance, shared intimate moments with him. If she was an informant, she was either the most skilled operative he'd ever encountered, or... He pushed the thought away, drowning it in another swallow of whiskey. Across town, Emma sat in Detective Sarah Martinez's cramped office, surrounded by case files and coffee cups. The sympathetic detective, a former patient of Dr. Chen's wife, had spent 2 days unraveling the twisted web of federal involvement in the orphanage's closure. "Look at this," Martinez said, spreading documents across her desk. "The federal recruitment attempt was real. They wanted you to inform on Salvatore. But when you refused," she pointed to a series of internal memos. "The orphanage closure wasn't just city planning, it was retaliation." Emma's hands shook as she read the evidence. But how did Kharkov get involved? That's where it gets interesting. Martinez pulled up surveillance photos on her computer. These agents? They're on Kharkov's payroll. He has people throughout the system, using federal resources to target his enemies. Back at the mansion, the children's rebellion gained momentum. Liam had organized them with military precision. No one spoke to the staff, touched their meals, or participated in the tutoring sessions Dominic arranged. They moved as a silent unit, communicating through gestures and written notes. Even Diego, usually quick to anger, maintained stoic silence when the guards tried to engage him. Sarah and Samuel sat back to back in the library, reading the same books they'd shared with Emma. Zach worked complex mathematical equations on his tablet, ignoring the tutor's increasingly frustrated attempts at conversation. The breaking point came during dinner. Lily, who hadn't made a sound in 3 years, stood suddenly at the table. Her small frame shook with rage as she faced Dominic. "You made her leave, just like the monsters took my mom!" The scream tore from her throat, raw and primal. The other children froze, stunned by their silent companion's outburst. Dominic's glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the marble floor. The sound echoed through the dining room as Lily's words penetrated the walls he'd rebuilt around his heart. In her hotel room that evening, Emma pieced together the final elements of Kharkov's plan. Detective Martinez's files revealed a complex scheme to frame Dominic for the trafficking operation, using falsified evidence and corrupted officials to seize his assets. But the most shocking revelation came from an old case file, a car accident in Monaco 20 years ago. The supposedly deceased Sofia Kharkov, listed under one of many aliases, had been living as Victor's partner, orchestrating operations across Europe before returning to Chicago. "She never died," Emma whispered, staring at the surveillance photo. The woman's features had changed with plastic surgery, but her cold eyes remained the same as in her wedding photos with Dominic. The attack came at midnight. Sofia's intimate knowledge of the mansion's security systems allowed Kharkov's forces to breach the perimeter at multiple points simultaneously. Emma, having raced to the compound after discovering their plan, slipped through the chaos using the service entrance Liam had shown her weeks ago. Inside, she found destruction. The pristine foyer lay in ruins, marble columns scarred with bullet holes. Through the smoke and confusion, she spotted Dominic near the grand staircase, pressing a hand to his bleeding shoulder. Their eyes met across the debris-strewn space. "You came back," he said, disbelief coloring his voice. Emma moved to his side, helping him stand. "They're my children. You're my..." The word caught in her throat, inadequate for what they'd become to each other. "Mia, Noah, and Ben," he growled. "They took them, used smoke bombs to separate them from the others. We'll find them, together," she promised, supporting his weight as they moved toward his office. The remaining children were being secured in the panic room, their faces pressed against the bulletproof glass as Emma passed. Dominic pulled her into a fierce embrace, his grip desperate despite his injury. "Forgive me," he whispered against her hair. "Just help me bring them home," she answered. "All of them." His kiss was hard and claiming, a seal on their renewed trust. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 2 decades of cold isolation finally shattered. "No one takes what's ours,"